Dr. Kira Santos wheeled her chair through the corridors of New Geneva Medical Center, her tablet balanced on her lap as she reviewed the latest xenobiology research. 3 months had passed since the Meridian Station accident, and the physical therapy was grueling, but her mind remained sharp. She'd thrown herself back into her work studying interspecies biology, trying to understand the fascinating diversity of life that had emerged when humanity joined the Galactic community. What she didn't know was that her split-second decision to shield young Whisper of Stars had already traveled farther than any human exploration vessel. On the forest world of Sylvanus Prime, Ambassador Thorn speaks truth, paced before the Zephyrian Council of Elders. The 7-foot-tall, crystalline beings resonated with harmonious frequencies that translated as urgent debate. The human's action defies all logical frameworks, Thorn argued, his translucent form flickering with agitated colors. She gained nothing, lost everything, yet she chose this path deliberately. Elder Cascade of Wisdom, ancient even by Zephyrian standards, hummed a low note of contemplation. Perhaps we have misunderstood the nature of intelligence itself. If consciousness can evolve beyond pure self-interest, what does this mean for our civilization? Meanwhile, in the underwater cities of Aquatica, the collective's central processing nodes buzzed with unprecedented activity. The hive-minded species had never encountered behavior that couldn't be explained by colony benefit calculations. Marine Biologist Unit 7742 transmitted its confusion to the greater consciousness. Human Santos Kira's actions suggest individual decision-making that contradicts species survival algorithms. This anomaly requires immediate study. The ripple effects were spreading. On the trading hub of Nexus Station, Captain Zara Okafor of the merchant vessel Wandering Star found herself in heated discussion with her Vrex first officer. Growl in darkness. The pack-hunting species understood protecting young but protecting the young of another species? It makes no sense, Growl snarled, his lupine features twisted in confusion. Pack protects pack, clan protects clan, but human protects all? Zara smiled grimly. That's what makes us human, I suppose. We're all part of the same pack, even when we don't know it yet. Back on Earth, Kira's sister Maya burst into the hospital room, her face flushed with excitement. Kira, you need to see this. She activated the holographic display showing news feeds from across the galaxy. You're famous. Every species is talking about what you did. Kira stared at the streams of alien commentary, translation algorithms struggling to convey concepts that had no equivalent in human language. I just ... I saw a kid in danger. Anyone would have done the same. No, Maya said softly. That's exactly the point. Anyone human would have, but apparently we're the only ones. 6 months after the incident, the galaxy was reshaping itself around a single question. What did it mean to be truly intelligent? The answer, it seemed, might lie in a species that had barely begun to explore the stars. Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of the newly formed Department of Interspecies Ethics at the Galactic University, stood before a packed auditorium. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to hear her lecture on the Santos phenomenon. The irony wasn't lost on her humans explaining humanity to the rest of the galaxy. The key insight, Elena explained, gesturing to a holographic display showing neural scans, is that human altruism isn't a bug in our evolutionary programming. It's a feature. We evolved in small groups where cooperation with strangers could mean survival. Our brains literally reward us for helping others, even at personal cost. In the audience, Whisper of Stars sat with their adoptive human family. The young Zephyrian had insisted on attending, their crystalline form still small enough to fit in a human-sized chair. They'd been learning about the being who'd saved them, and the weight of that sacrifice was beginning to dawn on them. I don't understand, Whisper. transmitted to their human mother, Dr. Sarah Chun. Why did Dr. Santos choose pain for herself to prevent my pain? The math doesn't work. Sarah smiled, remembering similar conversations with her own daughter. Sometimes the most important things can't be calculated, sweetheart. Sometimes you just know what's right. Meanwhile, on the Zephyrian homeworld, something unprecedented was happening. For the first time in their recorded history, a religious schism had formed. The rational orthodox maintained that Santos's actions were evidence of human mental deficiency, a cautionary tale about the dangers of emotional decision-making. But a growing movement called the Empathic Reformation argued that perhaps the Zephyrians had missed something fundamental about consciousness. Brother Crystal Song of Understanding, once a traditional priest, now preached to growing crowds. What if intelligence isn't about calculation alone? What if the highest form of consciousness includes the ability to transcend self-interest? The debate was tearing their society apart. Traditional Zephyrians couldn't comprehend choosing suffering for others. The reformers couldn't understand how they'd lived so long without it. On the war-torn planet of Kethera, General Marcus Rodriguez found himself facing an impossible choice. The hegemony forces had surrounded a refugee camp filled with non-combatants from 6 different species. Military doctrine was clear: tactical withdrawal to preserve his forces. But the images of Dr. Santos' shielding whisper of stars flashed through his mind. "Sir," his aide whispered urgently, "the evacuation ships won't arrive for another 4 hours. We can't hold this position." Marcus looked at the terrified faces in the camp humans, Zephyrians, Frex cubs, even a few collective drones who'd somehow developed individual consciousness. He thought of Kira Santos, paralyzed but unrepentant, and made his choice. The message arrived at Dr. Santos's rehabilitation center on a Tuesday morning that would change everything. The sender's identity made her drop her coffee cup. High Arbiter, void between stars, the most powerful leader in the Zephyrian Empire. Dr. Santos, the holographic message began, the translation giving the alien's crystalline form an oddly humble posture. "I am prepared to offer you something no human has ever received, a place on the Galactic Council as Earth's first representative. But I must meet you first to understand what you truly are." 3 days later, Kira found herself in the most surreal situation of her life. The Zephyrian flagship Harmony of Spheres had docked at Luna Station, and its entire crew was lined up to meet her. Each crystalline being hummed a different note as she passed, creating a complex symphony that her translator rendered as honor dash beyond dash comprehension. High Arbiter Void Between Stars was 12 feet tall, their form a masterpiece of living crystal that refracted light into impossible colors. When they spoke, their voice carried harmonics that made Kira's bones vibrate. "I have studied your species for months, Dr. Santos. I have reviewed every human philosophical text, every ethical framework, every religious doctrine. Yet I still cannot understand why you chose as you did." Kira looked up at the towering figure, feeling smaller than ever in her wheelchair. "I'm not sure I understand the question. A child was about to be hurt. I stopped it, that's all." "That is precisely what confuses me," the High Arbiter replied. "You gained nothing. You lost mobility, career advancement, personal comfort. By any rational calculation, you should have preserved yourself, but then a child would have died. A child not of your species, not of your clan, not even of your world." Kira was quiet for a long moment. "Do you have children, High Arbiter?" "I have produced offspring, yes. 3 successful genetic combinations that have reached maturity. Do you love them?" The question seemed to break something in the aliens. Composure. Their crystalline form flickered through several colors before settling on a deep blue. "Love is not a concept that translates well. I am ... invested in their success. Then imagine one of them under that falling beam. Imagine the terror, the pain, the ending of everything they could have been. Now imagine that feeling, but applied to every child you see, regardless of species. Kira's voice was gentle but firm. That's what it means to be human. For the first time in recorded history, a Zephyrian High Arbiter was silent not from calculation, but from overwhelm. Across the ship, Whisper of Stars watched the conversation through the security feeds. They'd grown during the months since the accident, their small crystalline form now reaching nearly human height. But more than their body had changed, their mind had been reshaped by living with humans, by experiencing the daily miracle of unconditional care. Mother Sarah, they transmitted to Dr. Chun, who'd accompanied them on the journey. I think I understand now. Dr. Santos didn't calculate. She felt. And feeling is what makes you alive. The High Arbiter's next words would echo across the galaxy. Dr. Santos, I believe your species may be the key to something we've all been missing. Will you help us learn what we never knew we needed to know? The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called for the first time in 3 centuries. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the great amphitheater of Nexus Prime, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony. That required massive translation matrices to decode. Dr. Kira Santos sat at the center of it all, her wheelchair modified with Zephyrian crystal technology that allowed her to interface directly with the translation network. Beside her, Whisper of Stars had insisted on attending, their young form now bearing the ceremonial markings of a diplomatic observer. The question before us is simple, announced High Arbiter Void Between Stars, their crystalline form resonating with authority. Are we prepared to reconsider the fundamental nature of intelligence itself? The response was immediate chaos. The collective spokesperson, amalgamation of a dozen biomechanical forms, transmitted rapid-fire objections. Individual sacrifice for non-colony members remains evolutionary contradiction. Proposal threatens basic survival algorithms. From the Vrex delegation, Alpha Prime Bloodfang snarled his dissent. Pack protects pack. Honor protects honor. Humans protect everything? This is weakness disguised as strength. But other voices were rising. Captain Zara Okafor, now serving as Earth's military liaison, stood from the human delegation. 6 months ago, General Rodriguez's forces held the line at Kethera. They saved 40,000 civilians from 17 different species. Not because it was strategically sound, but because it was right. The hegemony forces were so confused by the concept of defending non-humans that they hesitated long enough for reinforcements to arrive. The ethereal representative, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering field, pulsed with interest. A concept of rightness independent of personal benefit. Our philosophers have debated this for millennia. Perhaps the humans have achieved practically what we only theorized. Dr. Santos activated her interface, her voice carrying across the chamber. I didn't come here to convince anyone of anything. I came because people seemed to think what I did was extraordinary, when it was the most ordinary thing in the world. She paused, looking around at the assembled beings. Every day, humans make choices that prioritize others' well-being over their own. Parents sacrifice for children. Strangers help strangers. We donate organs to people we'll never meet. We're not special. We're just wired for connection. In the observation gallery, Brother Crystal Song of Understanding felt his faith crystallizing into something new. The empathic reformation had grown beyond anything he'd imagined, with Zephyrians across the Empire questioning the cold logic that had governed their lives for millennia. The human speaks truth, he transmitted to his followers. Perhaps intelligence, without compassion, is merely computation. Perhaps consciousness without connection is merely existence. The debate raged for hours. Some species saw human altruism as a dangerous infection that could destabilize careful evolutionary balances. Others viewed it as the next stage of consciousness development. The lonely ones, a species that had evolved in complete isolation, were fascinated by the concept of caring for others at all, but it was Whisper of Stars who changed everything. The young Zephyrians stood, their voice carrying the unique harmonics of someone raised between two worlds. "I want to tell you about fear," they said, their words translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "Before Dr. Santos, I thought fear was just a survival mechanism. You calculate danger, you avoid it. But living with humans taught me about a different kind of fear, the fear of others' pain, the fear of a stranger's suffering, the fear of letting someone die when you could save them." The chamber fell silent. Dr. Santos wasn't calculating when she threw herself over me. She was afraid of watching a child die. And that fear made her braver than any warrior, stronger than any calculation. That's what makes humans dangerous, not their weapons or their technology, but their inability to walk away from suffering. The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone expected. But it passed. Humanity would be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with Dr. Santos as their first representative. 2 years after the Meridian Station accident, Dr. Kira Santos had become something she never wanted to be, a symbol. The Santos Doctrine was now part of Galactic Council policy, the principle that intelligence must be measured not just by problem-solving ability, but by the capacity for empathy across species lines. She rolled through the corridors of the HFY, new Interspecies Ethics Institute built on Nexus Prime with funding from 17 different civilizations. The building hummed with activity as researchers from across the galaxy studied the phenomenon that had started with one moment of human instinct. Dr. Santos, called Dr. Elena Vasquez, approaching with a tablet full of data. The latest reports from the Zephyrian territories are remarkable. The empathic reformation has spread to over 60% of their worlds. They're establishing what they call compassion centers, places where they practice helping others without calculation. Kira smiled tiredly. And the resistance? Growing violent. The rational orthodox are calling it a mental plague. There have been conflicts on 12 worlds. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her moment of preventing violence had sparked wars across the galaxy. But she'd also seen the other side Vrex packs adopting orphaned cubs from enemy clans, collective drones developing individual consciousness and choosing to help rather than simply process, ethereal beings sharing their energy with dying strangers. Dr. Santos. The voice belonged to Whisper of Stars, now nearly adult-sized and bearing the crystal patterns of a junior researcher. They'd insisted on working at the Institute, studying the intersection of biology and philosophy. The data from the Kethera anniversary celebration is fascinating. General Rodriguez's actions inspired similar sacrifices on 47 worlds. The humans are teaching empathy by example. In her office, Kira reviewed the reports that arrived daily from across the galaxy. The lonely ones had made first contact with their neighbors for the first time in their species' history, driven by curiosity about connection. The warlike hegemony had established their first prisoner of war conventions, influenced by human concepts of dignity for enemies. But the most moving report came from an unexpected source. Captain Zara Okafor, now commanding the exploration vessel New Horizon, had encountered a previously unknown species on the edge of the galaxy. The Silence Dwellers were dying from a plague that their rigid social structure prevented them from. Addressing helping the sick was considered contamination. So we showed them, Zara's report read. My crew humans, Zephyrians, reformed Vrex, even a few collective individuals. We walked into their plague zones and started treating the sick. We didn't ask permission. We didn't calculate survival odds. We just did what felt right. Within days, the Silence Dwellers were joining us. They'd never seen outsiders risk themselves for strangers. It broke something in their worldview, and something better grew in its place. The door chimed, and High Arbiter Void Between Stars entered, their crystalline form now bearing subtle modifications that allowed for greater emotional expression, a result of their ongoing study of human consciousness. Dr. Santos, they said, their voice carrying new harmonics of warmth. I wanted to inform you personally. The Galactic Council has voted to establish the Santos Institute on every member world. The study of empathic intelligence will become mandatory for all diplomatic personnel. Kira looked up from her reports. And the opponents? Growing fewer. It's difficult to argue against a principle that saves lives. The High Arbiter paused, their form shifting to colors Kira had learned to recognize as contemplation. I have experienced something I never expected, Dr. Santos. Yesterday, I saw a human child fall on the station market. Without calculation, without thought, I moved to catch them. The instinct was ... extraordinary. I finally understand what drove you that day. Outside her window, Kira could see the plaza where a monument had been erected, not to her, but to the simple principle that consciousness must include conscience. Representatives from dozens of species brought their young to see it, to understand that intelligence without compassion was just clever computation. Her tablet chimed with a message from Earth. Dr. Sarah Chun, Whisper of Star's adoptive mother, had attached a video of children from 6 different species playing together in the New Geneva School playground. Human kids helping a young Zephyrian learn to run. Vrex cubs teaching patience to impatient collective drones. Everyone learning that differences made the game more interesting, not more dangerous. The children get it, Kira murmured to herself. They don't need to unlearn anything. They just need to grow up in a galaxy where caring for others is normal. As she watched the video, Kira realized that her moment of instinct had become something far larger than she'd ever imagined. It wasn't just about one human saving one alien child. It was about proving that consciousness could evolve beyond self-interest, that intelligence could choose love over logic, that the universe itself could be improved by the simple act of carrying out. The accident at Meridian Station had paralyzed her legs, but it had given an entire galaxy the ability to walk towards something better. And in the end, that seemed like a fair trade.